Hello, everyone, and welcome to T1Dto100 on how to age well and beautifully with type 1 diabetes. I'm Joanne Milo, and T1D200 is an organization to help us age gracefully and safely as we continue on this long, long journey. You got here after many years, and some of you not so many years, and there's still always so much to learn. We were just discussing that before. I just to do a little housekeeping here. This event will be recorded and released onto our YouTube channel. So if you missed it or you want to hear something or share it with someone, please feel free to do that. Uh, on with me today are Kelly DeFerme, I think I got it right, and Rebecca Jervey. These are members of the T1D to 100 community and also Loop and Learn communities, and they will help me with the chat and letting you all in. And if anyone has any questions, you can put it in the chat. We're not going to do open mic unless Greg wants to, and otherwise we'll take whatever you put in the chat and share it with Greg. So let me introduce you to Greg. Well, let me back up for a second. Let me explain just real quickly about T1D to 100 and what we're doing and why we're doing it. Um, all of us are aging. From the moment you're born, we are aging. So we're all on the same journey at some point. And what we hear so often is we're not really afraid of aging, but we're afraid of being misunderstood, unsafe, and unheard. We control our lives as best as we can, and to not be able to do that is terribly frightening. And aging with diabetes is not primarily about glucose control. It's about safety, dignity, continuity of care, and being understood. They need to listen to you, and that's what we really try to emphasize. And what we hear from our members all the time is they're fearful of losing control. As you age, things aren't as easy, and you wonder about that. Being misunderstood by the healthcare systems, that's a big one. And having no trained advocate when they need one most. And that brings us to what we're doing today with Greg Badros and Gluroo. It's maybe an opportunity to train an advocate or show you how to better manage yourself so that you might be able to do it longer. Now I'll introduce Greg. Gluroo is inspired by the simplicity of group messaging. I think that's old messaging, Greg, from a previous presentation, but it is now a comprehensive diabetes management platform. Greg who developed Gluroo, is a T1D dad since February of 2020, a month before COVID hit, when his 10-year-old son was diagnosed. And right away, he realized that diabetes is best handled as a team sport. Not all of us live that way, but it's something we can think about. And he knew he could build something better than what was available. And in August 2020, Gluroo was born. Greg is a former VP of Products and Engineering at Facebook and at Google, and he'll share today how over 200,000 of his users have made managing diabetes easier and safer by using the comprehensive diabetes solution he and his team have built. Learn how you can log food from a photo, import exercise from your watch, track insulin, and more using Gluroo. And just real quick background, Greg's a smart guy. Um, in the very best of ways, he has a BS in math and computer science from Duke University and a PhD and master's in science from the University of Washington in computer science and engineering. Uh, you'll enjoy this. It's a great opportunity to learn, and I'm going to stop sharing and turn this over to Greg right now. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for that introduction, Joanne. It's great to be here. I hope I can live up to just a tiny bit of the expectations that you've set now. But thank you for that. So I want to start with the usual kind of disclaimers to just remind you that and explain Gluroo has not been reviewed by the FDA or any regulatory body. We're just available for testing now. We want you to keep using first-party apps. You can't rely on our reminders. You can't rely on anything that we do. We're just trying to help. Please be careful when you try Gluroo, and that's all of my reminders. As Joanne mentioned, this is personal to me. My son was diagnosed in 2020, and it changed his life, but it also changed the lives of the people around him. As Joanne mentioned, I have a background that made me really believe that I could do something to make this better, like a lot of T1 dads before me. But when we started, the situation was dire, and we, honest to goodness, used paper logs for like 6 months. This was, Feb 2020 was the beginning of COVID. We weren't going anywhere. The benefits of a digital solution were a little bit more modest because we could just leave these paper on the kitchen table and we logged stuff. But it did get tedious after a while because I felt like I needed to transcribe all this stuff into a spreadsheet to be able to do the analyses that I wanted to do, and that got old pretty quickly. We then evolved to kind of using Facebook Messenger as a way of keeping the family in sync, my wife, my son, myself, around what kinds of treatments we were doing for my son. So we just had like shorthand. One SB 5 minutes ago meant he ate a Starburst to correct for a low and so forth. And so we just exchanged messages like this. Now, I want to stress that today, Gluroo, 90% of the people using Gluroo are not using it in this care coordination way. They're using it to manage themselves. The remaining 8%, about 92% are self-managing. The remaining 8% have multiple people in their Glue crew. It may be parents helping a child. It may be adult parents helping a senior. But some other mechanism where multiple people are collaborating together on diabetes care to share some of that burden. And so I'm going to talk to you today mostly about how to manage it for yourself, because I think that's the common case for Gluroo, and that's probably a common case for the folks of you here on this call. And so what I'm going to talk about is four big things that Gluroo lets you do. So first off, we try to make it super easy, super intuitive, and very fast to record as much or as little of your health events as you want. Anything related to your diabetes, we try to make it easy to put in a log in a single place so that all of the data is in one place. We try to do as much as we can to manage the workflow around it and reduce the cognitive burden of managing diabetes. We'll talk more about what that means. We then try to make it easy to learn from the data that you've logged and the behavior that your body has had based on all the things that you've recorded. And ultimately, of course, we're trying to improve health outcomes. Now, that can mean both your A1C and time in range and things like the sort of customary health outcomes, but also just improving your mental sanity around all this. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And doing things that do reduce your cognitive burden, take more off your plate and be hosted in the application makes it just easier and everything feel a little bit lighter. So I'll start with about logging health events. And the best way to log a health event is to do it automatically via an integration. And we have lots of integrations here. I pictured Libre sensors, Dexcom sensors, Omnipods, various open source looping software, AID software, Apple Health. There's lots of integrations built into Gluroo. I'm going to go through the CGM integrations because that's one of the most important. Many of you, I imagine, are on a continuous glucose monitor, and it's important to be able to see those data in real time in any app that's trying to support you. So we do support the G6 and G7 using a fetcher that uses your Dexcom Follow. We do support the Abbott sensors using Libre Link Up. We also support other apps. If you're using an open source solution like DIY Loop or IAPS or really anything that can write into a Night Scout instance, you can configure it to write into Gluroo as your Night Scout instance. We'll talk more about that in a second, but it acts as your Night Scout instance and you can configure it to write in and all the data gets in there in real time. We can also import CGM data from Apple Health or Google Health Connect. For example, the Stello and Lingo apps generally write into those locations, although not usually in real time. So this integration isn't as good if you're caring about the widgets or some of the other real-time functionality that Gluroo has. And finally, if you're on Android, we can read notifications and broadcasts from a compatible app. So ever since If you're using an Eversense CGM, it pops up a notification. We can read that notification, upload it to Gluroo, let other people see it, and just start collecting those data inside Gluroo too for your own learnings and education off of that. Now, what we do with the CGM data is every other thing that you log, we annotate with the CGM data. So whatever your number is, like in this, I'm showing a glucose tab that my son logged, and I'm logging not just a timestamp of 3:08 p.m., but I'm logging that his blood sugar was 61 right arrow, steady at that point in time, right? And it was still going down many minutes, several minutes later when I gave him a thumbs up, acknowledging that he logged the glucose tab. Okay. Um, so we already did that. What in the world? So I want to talk a little bit about the GGC. So the Gluroo Global Connect is an alternative to Night Scout that speaks the same API as Night Scout. So all of these things that you might be using to write into Night Scout or read from Night Scout, whether it's like an Apple Watch app or CarPlay or any of these things, we pretend to be Night Scout so that those things can make your data available to Gluroo for our statistics and everything else. I don't know why we keep ending up on that screen. Okay, the other integration I want to talk a little bit about is the OP5 integration. So we are the only app out there that has a real-time Omnipod 5 integration. So it shows in the Gluroo header looking something like this, where you can see that your OP5 is in automated mode. You can see how much insulin is on board, what the battery on the phone is, and how old that information is. Okay. The way that that works is via, it only works on Android and it works via that notification sniffing capability I mentioned before. Okay, it does log approximate bolus amounts and estimates carbs from that as well, and will show warnings. So this is great for getting your data from the Omnipod 5 into Gluroo so that you can use the other functionality of Gluroo. But it's unbelievably important to parents or somebody who is trying to follow what's going on with that pump to be able to see what's happening on that pump. If there's a problem with the pump's connection and it's switched into limited mode or something like that, I can see that from my phone, even though it's happening on my son's phone. Another integration I'll mention a little bit more about is the Apple and Google Health integration. So this works great for things like reading blood glucose meters. If you're not using a CGM, there are several blood glucose meters that will write into Apple Health Kit or Google Health Connect, and Gluroo can import those numbers into the Gluroo log. And then it will import exercises. Here's an example of Google Health Connect importing a 60-minute workout. It can pull in heart rate data. And we're going to, in a future release, we're going to have step counts and sleep tracking as well. Now, so those are the automatic integrations, the easiest way to get data into Gluroo. But there are other ways as well. So you can log a health event incredibly fast and incredibly simply just by sending a text message. So you'll see a little demo of this a little bit later, but all you have to do is type dose 2U or even just 2U, and that logs that you dosed 2 units of insulin. You can log bolus insulin, you can log basal insulin, you can log for foods, you can log 45 grams of carbs just by typing 45G and sending. It's incredibly quick, incredibly easy and fast to do these shorthand notations about these things. Okay, and so these are ways to get data in, and we'll see more why getting the data in is helpful. Okay, you can log low interventions by typing things like 1SB or 5 grams OJ or 20 grams apple juice or whatever. You can log a finger prick reading just by sending a message, 104 FP. Again, this is all sort of modeled after the ease with which you can communicate via messenger. You're communicating with the Gluroo oracle that understands all of these things and then is going to let you do interesting analyses and help you manage your diabetes by seeing all of this data come in. Logging exercise, logging new devices. We'll see other ways to log new devices and so forth. Okay. The second way you can log a health event is just via an AI understanding, an artificial intelligent agent understanding your description of a meal. So you can either type or dictate these things. So for example, if I hit the microphone in Gluroo and say, for dinner, I'm having pizza with mushrooms and pepperoni, then you'll see on screen something that looks like this, hashtag dinner, pizza with mushrooms and pepperoni. That's just transcribing what you say. And when you send it, our AI analyzes that and estimates 30 grams carb, 12 grams protein, 15 grams fat, and so forth. Well, why is that interesting? Well, with Gluroo, you can get a reminder an hour later to double check your blood sugar or to do a follow-on bolus because this is a high fat, high protein meal, for example. So you hit send and then this is in your log. Another way is to take a picture of the meal that you're eating. So again, our AI analysis, you simply take a picture of the bowl, the plate, whatever. A nutrition label is fine as well, and it turns into an analysis of that meal that goes in your log and estimates all the macronutrients off of that meal. Okay, so here we see this one's estimated at 20 grams, 5 grams sugar, 14 grams protein, etc. The next way you can log stuff is just via a simple tap to enter user interface. So you can simply hit the plus button in the bottom left, and you'll get a menu that looks something like this. And I'll show you what that looks like here with this demo, which hopefully works. Let's see if it'll run. Oh, maybe I have to hit that. Well, that was supposed to be a video demonstrating some stuff. So trust me on this. You hit, oh, there it goes. So we hit the sugar button, we hit the starbursts up top, and it's logged. Okay, that was all there was to it. Let me show that one more time here. Log a sugar intervention. We just tap the plus button, tap the sugar button, say we want 2 starbursts, save it, and it's in the log. And it's in the log. So that's just the tap to enter UI. Okay, and that works for all the different kinds of events. We also have a digital dosing table. This is kind of the moral equivalent of a bolus calculator without being a bolus calculator because we don't want to be regulated as if we have a bolus calculator. So to use this, you have to set up your carb ratio in ISF. So you can day part your carb ratio in ISF. Here's an example of where we've set an overnight part, a morning part, and then a midday part, with each with different carb ratios and insulin sensitivity factors. Okay, these are things your doctor can tell you or Gluroo can help you figure out with the data that you've entered. But if you've entered those things, then you can simply start like this. So here we're going to log some food first. We'll do a simple meal. We'll just pick a prior meal and log that. That has 20 grams of carbs, and 6 of which are fiber. So we're showing 14 grams of carbs up in the header. Now, when we go to bolus, we can tap plus, tap bolus, and choose the dosing table option. This is highlighting the number of grams that have been entered recently and the correction from our current CGM reading. We can change these values if we want to use 20 or whatever. We can change these values however we want, and then simply hit copy and then paste it into our logger with the paste button, and then add that to our log. Now we can see the 2.0 units of insulin on board up top. So that's the way the digital dosing table works. Now, after a log has been created, we don't always get it right at first. So there's a way to edit and modify the log. So I'll show you a little bit about how that works. So the log isn't always right when we first create it. If we want to edit something, we can long press on a message item and tap edit. And for example, let's say that we realize that this meal was actually a little bit more carby than we realized. So we hit plus 10% a couple times and then save that edit. Now the number of carbs have been updated and all the status in the app is updated to reflect that. Let's say we also pre-bolus our 2 units. We can change the time that that 2 unit bolus happened by simply swiping left on that. And we'll say, hey, we pre-bolus 15 minutes. Now that time moved from 2:55 p.m. to 2:40 p.m. So it shows as a pre-bolus in our log. So that's how to edit the entries after you've created them. Now, I promised that this would reduce cognitive burden. We talked about how to get data into the logs. There's a lot of ways in which Gluroo can help make things easier for you. So the first and the most popular of the things that we do is helping you see your CGM values wherever you want to see the CGM values. So that can mean watches, your dynamic island on your iPhone, or a lock screen widget, or a home screen widget on a Android, or whatever. It's such a popular feature that we've actually built a companion, a cousin application to Gluroo called GotCGM. So I'll demonstrate that. I'll show you our promotional video for that now.
This is Millie. Millie's got a CGM. Millie likes to look at her numbers everywhere she likes to look. Now she can with GotCGM. Display your blood sugar data on all your devices. Your smartwatch, your car, your phone notifications, and widgets. Got a CGM? Get GotCGM.
So that's GotCGM. I don't know if any of you use millimoles to measure your blood sugar, but that's why we named her Millie the Mole. Get it? Millimole? We thought it was funny. Feel free to laugh. I know I can't hear you. Anyway, so that's getting your data visible on the places that you want to look is really an important part of reducing the burdens of diabetes, making it just easier to discreetly check at a meal or whatever. GotCGM itself right now is the only way that we let you write CGM data into Apple Health as well. This is incredibly popular for getting Libre data from a Libre Freestyle 2 or 3 or 2 or plus or 3 plus into Apple Health. Because although the Lingo writes into Apple Health, the Libre does not. And so this is one way to get those numbers into Apple Health if that's your goal. Another really important thing that Gluroo does is tracks your carb on board and insulin on board. Kind of highlighted this a little bit in some of the demos that you've seen where there's a number of carbs showing up in the header and an amount of insulin showing up in the header. Ultimately, this kind of behaves like a pump level intelligence for an MDI user. So if you're not using a pump and you are willing to track your meals and your insulin doses with Gluroo, then these track and show over time how your insulin on board is decreasing over time so that you can be careful about stacking boluses and otherwise. Okay. Another way we help is by providing medicine reminders. So here, the user has set up taking Ozempic every other day and metformin daily, both at 3 p.m. They can also record Tylenol or Advil as needed, but they've configured that to make that easy to log and to get reminder notifications about each of those medicines. The next thing we do is make it easy to track your devices and sensors and pods, whatever devices you're using, so that you can get obvious reminders about how long is left before you have to change your sensor, or before you have to change your pod, or whatever. And this is what that looks like. I'm going to show you how we track sensors and other devices. We tap the camera. We point at the QR code and we log it. And if we want to add a pod, we point at the QR code on an Omnipod, and it's in our log. So we aim to do this stuff crazy fast to make it really easy and almost fun to log these kinds of things. Next, and one of the first things that we worked on, and one of the first value propositions for us was to work together as a Gluroo team. And so here's an early demonstration of how that works. Let's go back and try again. So here you see the person on the left is responding to their mother about what they ate, and it's showing up on the mother's phone on the right-hand side. So the daughter is explaining what she ate, and the mother is being able to, from her own phone, anywhere across the world, is able to support her. Okay. And so all of this happens on all of the phones in the Gluroo in real time, right? All of these things are updating in real time. Finally, we have what we call smart reminders. We don't have secondary alerting also for regulatory reasons, but we do have a patented reminder system. So imagine you're coming to dinner as Junior starts to go low. Kind of with a regular follow-up, everybody's phone is going to start to buzz simultaneously. Like with Gluroo, instead, the alert first buzzes only the child's phone. Okay, it gives them a notification, gives them a chance to log the intervention, like a Starburst candy, like I showed you earlier. And if they do log that, their message closes the alert, and it never ever buzzes. So they might log like that, and then it shuts off the alert, and it never ever goes to me. And only if he fails to correct does the alert progress to me. Okay. It even can use who's closest to Junior to decide who gets the alert next and things like that. Okay. So I've shown you a whole lot about how you get data in. I've tried to show you ways in which Gluroo can make it easier to manage diabetes. I want to now talk a little bit about how you can learn from the data that you've collected using diabetes, because Gluroo ends up having this amazing ability to grab everything, put it all in one place, and then let you see all of it together, an integrated log that's got your food, your insulin, your exercise, all of that, your intervention snacks, all of that all together. And so let's just look a little bit at the way that you can see that data. We let you log as much or as little as you like. We do try to give you more benefit if you log more, but if you log less, that's fine. We don't force your hand to make you log more. So here's what that looks like after you have a comprehensive log. This is an example of my son's log from a couple days ago. So with Gluroo, you can look at the log using the Meals tab on the bottom and see all the different meals from the different days with photos if you took them. Or you can just look at the reverse chronological log of all the things that have logged and scroll back, while the top header shows you your average blood sugar and your time in range statistics and how much insulin you used on each day. Or you can look at it as a chart and scroll around the chart looking at your blood sugar numbers with the different integrated data, boluses, carb information, changes of sensors, all of that incorporated into the chart. When you're on the log, you can even see a chart as just a drop-down chart like this. And you can see estimated blood sugar numbers, a forecast of where your blood sugar is going to go based on what we've understood so far. So that is that's a little bit about what you can do with the log after the fact. And then we do a whole bunch of things to try to make that information available to you in a better format. So every week you get an email like this that shows how things went 2 weeks ago and how things went just in the last week. So it's summarizing things like the median blood sugar the variability, time in range for those weeks, time below range, etc. Including if you happen to log carbs and meals and logged insulin, then we give you information about those details as well. We also, Joanne just asked about reports for your clinics. We have a full ambulatory glucose profile. There's a lot more data in here in the various charts that we provide because we know things about your insulin dosing. We know things about your exercise. There's all kinds of charts like that in here. I don't have a visual on it, but we have a great chart that shows your response to each of the meals of the day over the last week. So are you typically going high after breakfast, but not after lunch and things like that? There's in-app statistics that can show you things like average blood sugar, the number of highs and lows in the last 24 hours, time in range stats, GMI estimations, and so forth. You can even customize the way that this looks. We can easily customize the stats just by long pressing on one of the cards, and the cards start to jiggle, and you can move these around and change the order so that they can reflect what you want to see. Our charting, I talked a little bit about charting. Charting is a whole conversation onto itself, so I'm not going to get deep into charting today. Look for new video content up on our YouTube channel, but we do a good job with that as well. In the app, there's other kind of charts that you can see. So, for example, here is a chart that shows for each Omnipod 5 pod that my son wore, there's 29 of them over the last 90 days. What was his blood sugar for each pod? So kind of looking, were any of the pods bad pods? And they look about normal. They're all about the same. But what's more interesting is if you split up each pod by how long he's been wearing that pod, you can see a pronounced change from 12 hours after he puts the pod on to towards the end of the pod's lifetime, where his blood sugar is higher towards the end of the pod's lifetime, right? So it's clear using these data, we know that we should be more aggressive with our use of insulin towards the end of an Omnipod 5's wear time compared towards the first day of the pod's wear time. You know, it starts a little slow, but then after about 12 hours, it's working really well and then gets progressively worse towards the 3-day lifetime of the pod. At least for my son. You might be different, right? And that's why this data is individual. Oh, trying to find my cursor. There we go. There's a couple other reports. Some of these reports are available via the web version of Gluroo. You go to app.gluroo.com, sign in with the same account that you signed in to Gluroo, and you're able to see these reports. So this bottom one is an interesting one. It is our data scientists report showing that he has pretty bad blood sugar on Friday and Saturday nights when he's out drinking with his friends. I have his permission to share this, but that is something that you can see by this heat map. Okay, Saturday mornings he also tends to maybe that's overeating on Saturday brunch or not being able to control the carbs there quite as well. Right? These are some of the visualizations we make available. And finally, of course, the end goal of all this is to improve health outcomes. So we have not done a clinical trial, but what we have done is a retrospective data analysis. We basically took users' data who signed up for Gluroo, looked 3 months back and 3 months forward after they'd been using Gluroo for 3 months, and we saw a statistically significant change in estimated A1C and GMI, and also an improvement in time in range from 71% to almost 80%. So this data, although again, it's not a clinical trial, it's very encouraging that it's making a difference for these folks. Perhaps most importantly, our users love this. These are just some of our many champions talking about their love of what we built. We have 4.7 stars in the App Store, tons of 5-star reviews. And we're available today in over 100 countries, and there's even more languages than this slide shows. Um, I'm up here talking about this, but there's a bunch of us building this stuff. Been working on this now for 6 years. Um, and here are some QR codes. Let me get out of the way to find it. You can also just search for Gluroo or search for GotCGM in the app stores, and you'll find it just fine. But you can also point your camera to either of these things. And that's the prepared talk. There were a lot of good questions that I saw coming across as I went. I need to find where in the world the chat, there it is. Okay. Um, why don't I go through the questions that came up first? Does that sound good? And then I'll take more questions live. When you have a question after I answer these questions, if you have a question, you can probably unmute yourself. I don't know if people are allowed to unmute them. Yeah, okay. You
Yep.
should be able to unmute yourself at some point. But let me go through the ones that came up. So um, there was the question about Night Scout, or well, maybe that was about Glue. Okay, yeah, what is Night Scout, right? So I think that got answered by Rebecca. Night Scout is something that was built by some T1 dads back now 14 years or so ago, like around 12 or 13, and still has been maintained and still running pretty well. Um, Thank you, Bill, for your comment. I do it because I love my son and I'm happy to help. Um, Seems like it would be helpful communicating with family members. Absolutely. Like just staying in sync about what's going on with a person with diabetes. Again, whether it's an adolescent who could benefit from help or supervision, or a senior who wants to involve their adult kids as followers with extra capability to interact with them. I think it serves both of those uses really, really well.
Let me jump in there on for seniors. A lot of people who've lived a long time with T1D don't involve their spouse or their kids. They manage it themselves. They're fine. But as we age, we become less fine or less able or just might want some help. And this seems like an interesting way to bring them along somewhat painlessly to see what you're doing and then be able to manage if you can't, if you're in the hospital or anything like that.
Yeah, and one of the scenarios that we really tried to optimize for was avoiding you from having to reach out to the person you're supporting just because they've got a low blood sugar. If the person being supported has low blood sugar and logs that they have taken a Starburst, your phone never buzzes. You don't see that. You're not tempted to text them or call them or bother them saying, "Hey, Ma, have you taken care of the low blood sugar? My phone's buzzing at me." I can imagine there are plenty of folks that sort of invited their adult kids to follow them and then got annoyed at their adult kids calling them saying, "Hey, are you taking care of yourself? Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm okay." A 62 doesn't kill me, right? That's not what I'm going to die from. And so being able to proactively log that you took the blood sugar, you took something for your low blood sugar event, can thwart those conversations before they ever start. Um, Okay, Joanne, you asked the question, um, is there a tutorial to make this easy to learn? This was it. So we're still working on it. There's more data to come. We have a YouTube channel that shows some demonstrations. We try, as you onboard, there's a couple of, in-app tutorials that help get you started with the very basics, but there's so much functionality in it that we have a lot of work to do to cover it all. But
Well,
we are doing that work.
I look back, we did an interview in 2022, and you you are a different entity at this point. That's amazing. You haven't been sitting around doing nothing, huh?
Yeah, no, we've been busy. And I remember when I was preparing this talk, I was looking at some of the D data slides and even we were finalists at the Diabetes Center of Bern, Switzerland's Innovation Challenge a couple years ago, and I was looking at that, and we were bragging about having 15,000 users, and now we're at 210,000 users. So we've been really fortunate to get a lot of people excited about what we're building and helping us make it better. We've tried to be pretty responsive to the feedback that comes in. Next question was, does it say favorite foods or meals? It sort of does today, and it's going to do an even better job in a release probably within 6 weeks. So today, your favorite meals, you even saw there was one demo where I show logging something that you had eaten before. Just everything that you log kind of gets auto-completed and is available for you to thumb through. But today there isn't I want to star this meal to make it easy to re-enter. That's coming though. We're working on that, and there's some really cool stuff that we'll talk about in 6 weeks or so to show. Our primary focus right now has been improving food logging. The AI-driven food logging is just amazing, and there's so much more we can do with that we've got a lot of cool stuff to come up. Rebecca asked, are Starburst defaulted? Can you change to your most frequent glucose sources? Absolutely. That already exists in the app and has for a couple years now. You can add your favorite snacks with just a little plus button for custom snacks when you're in that plus menu item, and that will change. That will enable you to log it either by using the plus menu or by just typing in like one Smartie or whatever, one GT for glucose tab. You can make the abbreviations whatever you want. That works really well. Sabrina, thanks for attending. Why would you want Gluroo on your watch if you have Dexcom G7 Direct to a watch? You probably wouldn't, except for the following two things. So, Dexcom G7 Direct to watch. Well, so I've never used Direct to watch because I don't have Type 1, and my son does not use an iPhone. He uses an Android phone in part so that some of the integrations with the OP5 will work with an Android phone and they won't work with an iPhone. That's something we'd love to fix, but we need Insulet's help to fix that. But one of the problems with the watch integrations that the big device guys are doing is that they are doing them as watch complications. And watch complications only get to update 72 times a day. And if you do the math on that, your CGM updates a lot more frequently than that. So Gluroo actually is able to show you every single new CGM reading on your watch. It updates once per minute if you're on a Freestyle Libre 2, modulo some things that we do to reduce battery drain, because updating once a minute is a little bit costly from an energy perspective. But that's one reason you might want to do that. Not everybody uses direct to watch yet, and certainly if you're on a Libre sensor, this stuff is really critical. I would say we do see a slight bias, especially for GotCGM. We see a bias towards people with Libre sensors using GotCGM because their first-party app is a little further behind in terms of some of those niceties. Millie is my mom. Oh. Okay, that's funny. Can GotCGM send the same CGM results to multiple watches? Yeah, absolutely. So each person uses GotCGM. Well, so for Gluroo, not GotCGM. Gluroo is the one that has a glue crew and has multiple people. So if you have a mom, a dad, and a kid all using Gluroo, each of their watches can get the numbers. Okay, it shows on everybody's watches. It can show on everybody's lock screen, all of that stuff. Sarah asked, Bill asked, does it integrate with InPen? Yes, if you're on Apple, because the InPen can be configured to write into Apple Health Kit, the boluses, and Gluroo will import from Apple Health Kit. You just use the Apple Health integration. We have a bunch of users that is their primary thing. They use the InPen with Gluroo, they log food with Gluroo, they import the InPen insulin bolus data in, and they have kind of a great little mini pump setup where they use Gluroo to track IOB and COB and use our bolus calculator and then just enter that number into the InPen app rather than using their bolus calculator. They use our digital dosing table. Um, Deborah, thank you. We think it's wonderful too. Are there useful reports to share with medical providers? Um, uh, I showed some of them. We have a pretty standard ambulatory glucose profile. Are HCPs aware of this app? Many are, not all are. One of the functionalities of the app is to share with your provider. We have an upcoming release of the provider-facing web app that allows you to log in without using, it allows you to log in with your work email address. This was a glaring omission in our clinic-facing solution. You had to use either a Google or an Apple sign-in. And a lot of people at, Sanford Health don't have a Google or an Apple Health login that they can use for work-related stuff. So that's coming out probably in the next week or two. That's been ready for a little while. We're just doing some more testing. Um, Joanne, did I answer your question about medical providers?
Absolutely.
Okay. Include information or about health or other factors that might impact your blood glucose, illness, stress. I love this question, L. Harper. Thank you for that. So, yes. So we actually have two great new, they're relatively new, last year or so. We do menstrual tracking for females, which lets you enter kind of time horizons for your period and length of period and stuff like that, and then can show you statistics about how your blood sugar is doing relative to your period cycles, both on a chart and other reports and so forth. And we also have a symptom tracker. If you looked closely at that plus menu that we were looking at before, one of the buttons was like mood or symptoms or something like that. And so you can add your own custom symptoms and you can record, oh, I've got a headache, or oh, I've got a fever, or whatever, in there to track all that stuff. You can also just record plain text. You can put a note in your log and say whatever the heck you want, right? We don't limit you. We let you log whatever it is that you want. If you want to log, I broke my arm, you can log you broke your arm. If you want to log, I got my car washed, you can log that. I don't know what relevance it has to your diabetes, but you can log whatever you want in there. We do have mood and symptoms supported so that we can then do analyses about those things. Deborah asked, have we integrated this with Twist? As a matter of fact, we have one user on Twist now. She's one of our product managers. We hope to make that available within a couple weeks as well. It should be in our next release of Gluroo that you should be able to use a very experimental version of a Twist integration. Let's see, Gluroo Facebook group. Yes. Hi, Sarah. Yes, we're grateful for your contributions in the Facebook group, and that's a good plug. There is a Facebook group. It does require answering a couple questions and then submitting, but we try to get people in pretty quickly. We have almost 5,000 members in the Facebook group now, so it's a great community. And it's about more than just Gluroo, although it's predominantly about learning about Gluroo and supporting each other in using Gluroo. Bill asked about Snack. And candidly, we think of Snack more as an alternative to Gluroo. Snack, unfortunately for them, they worked really hard on doing food analysis, and then it turns out that that kind of got commoditized, and a bunch of people can do food analysis pretty well. We think we have some of the best food analysis out there. Everybody's about the same in terms of accuracy, but Gluroo is faster than everybody else. I'm a systems guy, so we've made that really fast, and we think that that's one of the killer features of food logging is getting you your AI answer in 3 or 4 seconds. So if you're on a good Wi-Fi connection, you're not waiting for those answers. They come quickly. Now, if you're on a 4G connection with 2 bars, then yeah, it might take 7 or 10 seconds before the answer comes back. Okay, but we do try to be really fast and have about the same precision as most other people. We also try to differentiate by being better at editing that, and that's going to get even better in the coming weeks. Let's see. Some apps are tough on aging eyes. Yeah. So this is something we've got. There is a display setting. You can both set light and dark mode, but there's also a large text setting. that increases the size of all of the text in the app. It's so hard to get this right across iOS and Android because there's system level things that let you control the size of text and change things and so forth. We do the best that we can on that. Honest to God, in 1 week about a year ago, we got like 3 people saying the text is too small. Can you make it bigger? And in the group, we also got the text is too large. Can you make it smaller? Right? I mean, this is one of those things that's very hard to please everybody for sure. So we do have one setting that's larger default right now, and we keep playing with that to try to find the right compromise. So I got through the questions that were in text. Happy to answer other questions. We have 8 minutes left or so. So are there other questions people have?
If you have a question, you can unmute and pop up with a question. And if you don't, I have a final question, but I'll wait to see if anyone jumps in.
Joanne, this is Bill Williams. I do
Bill.
have a question about whether this, I mean, your whole approach here is what I'm going to call a typical T1D parent. Your concern came from taking care of your child. And as a result of that, you and your peers have done an enormous amount for people like me. I mean, I've been at this, what Joanne calls a journey, I call it more of an adventure for 66 years. I'm totally self-managed, and I am finding that I'm not as sharp as I used to be. And so one of the things that I am most concerned about is how do I get somebody else to make 188 clinical decisions for me every day? I mean, I'm sure you're aware of those statistics about all this. I think that number is grossly overblown, but whatever. And what I'm trying to figure out is how do we create a subset of all of this data that we can sell as a package to assisted living, to adult daycare, to people that are going to be in place of our own self-management at some point. And everything I've seen, and I'm going to include Gluroo in this, is so data intensive that it's beyond the capacity of a lot of sort of really not involved people to take care of this.
Yeah. Bill, what's your therapy today? Do you do MDI or are you on an AID?
Nope, I am on an MDI and I am actively considering a AID system.
Yep.
For a variety of reasons. But I'll tell you too that I've tried a tubed pump maybe 40 years ago.
Right.
Couldn't stand it.
Yep. So I'll warn you, I am not a physician and this is not medical advice.
Listen, you don't have to do that with me.
I do because the recording is being made available. So
well, I
am not a physician and this is not medical advice.
But if it weren't for guys like you hacking Dexcom, none of this progress that we've made would be available.
Yeah. So first, a shout out to Dexcom and Abbott. They've been wonderful partners in all of this stuff. Although we don't have a formal partnership with either, they've been very supportive when we've had questions, and they've been wonderful to work with. The point of the disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. Is the best way I know how to make all those decisions through the day is to use an AID to do that. And we don't want to make all those decisions either. And the data suggests that anything under 7 and the risk of complications recedes to roughly normal levels, right, for your A1C.
No, that's true.
Yeah, and staying under 7 with an AID requires far fewer decisions through a day, right? And so my family focuses on make sure you pre-bolus, make sure that we know when sensor, make sure that there's never a shortage of devices. The supply chain around devices, know when a device is going to expire so that you've got the next one handy. And so that if you're traveling, you didn't lose it. You're not forgetting to have insulin at the thing. So you're just avoiding all of those excursions, those high excursions, and be very proactive about handling the low excursions. If you bolus aggressively, then be ready with the correction and do it, catch the fall.
Yeah.
And so the number of decisions that I feel like my son has to make in a day, and my son is almost completely self-managed. Okay.
Right.
He does all this himself. He's 13 now. He was actually 7 when he was diagnosed. I think he probably was 10 when Joanne and I met, and that's why she may have mentioned 10. He was 7 in 2020 when he was diagnosed. He's 13 now. Manages all this stuff himself, and we just supervise. And we make sure that the supply chain is working for him. So it's hard. There's the kinds of decisions that you then do need to make are things like adjusting your carb ratio and your ISF yourself, because you can't wait for a doctor to tell you that you need that stuff to change. You
Right.
really have to figure that out on your own. And we try to give you the data to be able to make those decisions. We just parrot back data to you. In an ideal world, you would share Gluroo with your clinician, and we can then provide suggestions to your clinician that your clinician then hands off to you after they've double checked it, right? And that's the workflow that we think is really compelling and helpful.
Well, because what I'm concerned about is sharing with the staff of an assisted living facility.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my goal at this point, is to figure out how to make that happen. And let me do some studying on Gluroo, and then I may well get back to you with some questions.
You certainly, logistically, you certainly can share with the staff of an assisted living home. One of the early motivating features was a school nurse. You can add somebody to your Glue crew with like limited time horizon. They can only see from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. and they don't see their logs outside of that time horizon, and they only get alerted Monday through Friday. So we have functionality that's inspired more by the school nurse, but would apply to some extent to an assisted living home as well. I think the real issue there is just going to be around liability. Even in the hospital, hospitals won't even let you use a CGM and an AID when you're in there for something else.
Trust me, we all know this.
Yeah. And so that to me is a different it's a different problem that has more to do with liability than has to do with what can or can't be done. Are there other questions before we sign off?
I have one. Greg, I love
Hi,
the app.
Sarah.
Hi, I'm new. I've been using it now for 2 or 3 weeks. I absolutely love it. The one thing I'm struggling with, and it's only because I live in the Northeast, we had a power outage and we didn't have any internet.
Yeah,
and I
right.
didn't
You
realize
want
that-
offline
Yeah,
use.
that
I
would
know
be
your
huge.
name. I know who you are. Yes, I know
That
you
would be
want that.
huge.
I want that too. So she's asking about offline use. So one of the motivating use cases for this is just during travel. We sometimes call it camp mode. When you're out in the wilderness and don't have Wi-Fi, don't have 4G, you're traveling, you're on a plane, whatever. That use matters to a lot of us, and we have done some work on this. It is quite a hard problem to do really, really well, especially in a world where you're trying to combine people's logging. So if it's just a single user app, which Gluroo never has been, right, for better and for worse, we started out as a multiplayer app. And the problem is if you're trying to do offline, it's called eventual synchronization between multiple separate devices, combining their logs when they come back together and get back online. It's a well-studied, relatively hard problem, especially if you started with an assumption that you had a data connectivity, which for better and for worse we started with. So it's on our list. I have nothing to report at this time. It is hard to get right, but we're smart people, so we'll get it right at some point.
Thank you. I love the app,
Greg,
though. It's
this is-
fantastic.
Yeah, thank you for
This
that.
is
And you've been
amazing.
you've been a great member of our community already. I appreciate that.
It's fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is amazing. I've seen you grow. It's mind blowing what you've created in just 5-6 years. My favorite question is, how did you come up with the name Gluroo?
Yeah. So you may already know the answer, and that may be why you're asking the question. I can't remember for sure. So we originally thought of this as a glucose guru. So and then it's like a portmanteau of those two words. Guru gives you Gluroo, but you would spell that Gluru. But I actually asked my then 5-year-old kid at the time, how she would spell Gluru. I think I was doing a test for like, would a regular person be able to, if they heard the name, would they type it into the web browser correctly and find our site okay? And she spelled it Gluroo. So that spelling stuck because the minute she spelled it that way, like I had this vision, and I think my wife had the same vision of, oh, we could use a cute kangaroo to be our mascot. And so the Glukaroo was born, and we stuck with the name Gluroo. I think Gluroo was also cheaper as a domain to buy, so that helped too. We built this company up on my own dime, so we were and remain very frugal and very efficient in the way that we do stuff. But that's how it came to be Gluroo with ROO at the end.
Thank you. I have the absolute greatest respect for everything you've done here. I understand it, and it's so comprehensive. We will edit and put this video out, and for those of you still here, we have programming coming up starting in 2 weeks. We've got events coming up and speakers, so we can all educate ourselves. But I think this is just so interesting. Thank you for the time. Thank you for
Yeah.
being so enthusiastic. Um,
My pleasure. And thanks again for the invitation, Joanne. It was super to catch back up with you, and I'm delighted to meet some of your community as well. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.